Greetings, welcome back to my channel. I would just like to give my thoughts about the Carmelo Anthony Austin Metcalf stabbing incident. If you've been following the news recently, there was a stabbing at a track meet between high schools in Frisco, Texas. Okay, apparently a black student by the name of Carmelo Anthony was seeking shelter from the rain under a tent during a downpour of rain. So the rain fell and he decided to seek shelter under a tent, right? Apparently, this was the tent that belongs to another school. And so a group of students approached him and began to harass him, physically touch him and push him around to get him to move away from the tent and into the rain, right? Apparently, he was approached by two individuals who happened to be twin brothers, right? And these twin brothers reportedly harassed him, grabbed his bag, and this led to him having a scuffle with these individuals, uh, which resulted in him getting a weapon from his bag, a knife, stabbing the person one time, and moving away from the tent after this incident, right? But I have an article here. The title of the article is Frisco Track Meet Stabbing Suspect. Quote, I did it, end quote. Frisco stabbing suspect says he did it in self-defense. The Frisco teenager accused of stabbing another student athlete at a track meet told officers as he was being taken into custody that he did it in self-defense. So the 17-year-old suspect accused of fatally stabbing another student at a Frisco ISD track meet admitted to the crime because, quote, he put his hands on me, end quote, according to an arrest report. Witnesses told police the two students got into a fight over where the suspect was sitting. They saw the suspect pull a knife out of his bag after the victim tried to push him out of the space. While being arrested, the suspect asked officers if what happened could be considered self-defense. Now, family, what I'm noticing about the reporting on this issue is that they are basically trying to convict him in the press, right? Because if you look at the photos that they are using to represent the suspect and the victim, they're using photos of football games that the victim played in. They're showing hunting photos with his family. They're showing him smiling alongside his twin brother at various school functions, whereas the suspect is only being portrayed with his mugshot, you know. And so, because of the nature of the situation, we know that this took place in Texas, and there happens to be a high prevalence of racial tension. We know that this situation was going to be portrayed from one angle alone, right? But family, I just wanted to delve into this a bit because I think the way the situation occurred should be an open and shut situation. You know, in my view, it can be said that he may be wrong for having the knife on the premises. But I do believe that in the case of a person under duress, being physically attacked and outnumbered by a group, um, self-defense um, would be permissible in that kind of situation. I don't believe that violence is the solution, but we know that in the face of an attack, a person has no choice but to defend themselves, right? But in my view, family, this situation really boils down to privilege and racial insensitivity, right? Because these students are not security guards. They don't work for the facility. They don't have the responsibility of telling a person where they should stand, and they don't even have the authority to enforce it, right? But we know that in a society in which there is a perception, a negative perception of black people, and there's um, a large presence of persons who believe in racial superiority and inferiority, so on and so forth. We know that some of these dynamics will also be at play among students, right? And I believe that these students were just a reflection of the broader society who feels like there is a power relationship between whites and blacks that dictates how persons are supposed to behave or how persons are supposed to respond, right? And so these students felt entitled to tell a black student to move. They felt they had the authority to remove him from the tent, right? When I first heard this story, I thought the tents were those large tents that have like a cover around the sides and around the back and the front, with only like a small entrance, right? And so I was imagining that he entered a space that was enclosed, and so they felt like he was violating the privacy of the space. This tent is literally just a metal frame with a tarp on top of it that has like the school logo, right? So it's basically see through all around, only the frame, the metal frame, and then like the top has a tarp connecting the four poles, right? So in other words, this really is like a flimsy tent. It's not really like a really extravagant tent. Persons can literally just walk and stand under it, right? And so this area should have been considered um, permissible for persons in the rain. Like if the rain was to fall down and persons were close to the tent, it should have been permissible that persons would sit there and um, be allowed to stay there until the rain passes, right? But family, I have some breaking news about this story because another account has emerged of what really took place that day. This was another eyewitness who was there with his two daughters. This video is courtesy of a YouTube channel called The Amazing Lucas. So you all can check out that channel and subscribe to that channel. But The Amazing Lucas found a video of an eyewitness who told a different story of what took place that day.
Crazy bad. Everybody trying to get back to their cars or get in, places where they, wouldn't get all extra wet. Dude was sitting up on the tent, right? He was on his phone, right? My daughters was up under the same goddamn tent. Yeah. So I'm paying attention to my kids, but at the same time, they're in the same vicinity, so I'm watching everything going on around it because I'm there for my children. So, dude walks up, McKellen, bro. He wasn't even under the tent at the time. They came from a whole separate tent and walked over there. They intentionally went over there to this kid, man.
So let me stop it right there for a second. So if you look at many of the news reports and you read some of these articles, they would make the claim that Carmelo Anthony went into a tent or went under a tent that was occupied by these persons already. And then, you know, they claim that they heard him speaking. I don't know who he was speaking to, if he was there by himself, but the claim is that they approached him while they were under the same tent. But here it is, the witness is saying clearly that these persons weren't even under the tent that Carmelo Anthony was under, right? So it seems that he made efforts to not invade any spaces that were occupied by these persons, but they actually came over to his tent, presumably in the rain, from one tent to another, and then proceeded to engage him with the hostility and the physical violence.
Dude was sitting there on his phone just trying to get dry. You feel me? One thing went from another. They grabbed this man and they tried to punch on dude. Dude went in his bag and what they went to try to jump this dude and punch on this dude, man. And he protected himself, dude. That's what happened. Yeah.
So family, you heard it from an eyewitness who was on the scene. They actually were attempting to punch him. Maybe they already did exchange some blows. They grabbed on him, and according to this eyewitness, this precipitated the whole situation. He did not go to an area where they were all sitting and intentionally create tension. He didn't intentionally create hostility. He made an effort to actually sit somewhere away from them, and they proceeded to come to his area to create this issue. And unfortunately, it irreversibly changed the lives of two promising athletes. You know, both of them play football, both of them were standouts on the track. So unfortunately now, this could potentially ruin both of their lives. One would have already lost his life, another facing potentially life in prison for murder, right? I believe that this was an incident of self-defense. And like I said, I believe this is really stemming from the larger society. We know that the individual is a construct of society, and so we would only replicate that which we were exposed to. And here it is, these two students who were reportedly bullies in the school, who have a hot temper, who feel like they were there to dominate the situation, ended up causing one of the twin brothers to lose his life. I believe that there's some dishonesty at work with regard to these accounts of what happened. So it's important that they have some balanced accounts of what really took place, because it seems to me that um, the the twin brother and another individual seem to be corroborating with each other, or trying to corroborate each other's story by portraying Carmelo Anthony as the aggressor, as if he just pulled out his knife like in a movie and said, "Touch me again and see what happens." It just doesn't seem likely that it took place in that way. But in any event, I believe he stood his ground according to what is normally acceptable, family. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. One other point about this situation, family. I'm noticing a situation that is going on the GoFundMe platform in relation to Carmelo Anthony and his family. Okay, it seems to me that some forces are being mobilized to make things more difficult for his family to actually raise some funds for his legal defense. Okay, apparently 6 consecutive GoFundMe campaigns have been canceled and deleted by the platform, and it seems to me that they are not permitting this family to have fair access to the platform to enable them to get support from the broader community. Okay, according to the family, the narrative being spread is false, unjust, and harmful. They are saying, as a family of faith, they are deeply grateful for all the support during this trying period. Your prayers and assistance mean more to us now than ever. Okay, that's the statement from the family, the Anthony family, who was actually trying to generate some support by putting out these campaigns. They had to actually rely on an alternative by the name of GiveSendGo. All right, and according to the founder of GiveSendGo, in defense of this campaign on their platform, uh, Heather Wilson reportedly stated this. She said, "I wanted to share my perspective on the ongoing discussion about whether we should allow fundraising for individuals who have been charged with the crime. We are now seeing similar outrage for the rights as we once did from the left, when we allowed campaigns for Kyle Rittenhouse and Daniel Penny. In both of those cases, we upheld the principle that someone is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Shouldn't that same standard apply here as well? Those were some true words from Ms. Wilson. If you can recall, Kyle Rittenhouse was charged with killing two protesters at a Black Lives Matter protest, I believe. And also, Daniel Penny killed a homeless black person on a train, and was able to use the same platform to raise funds for legal defense, right? So, once again, we see that duplicity still exists in America and that there is a different standard for blacks than there is for whites. Um, I don't see what the difference is. This is another individual that has a case before the courts. They are trying to get some help for the legal defense. They should be allowed to use the platform just like anyone else. But, once again, there's an outcry against this platform, but apparently it's been successful. They've raised $285,000 to date, and also they are trying to get a goal of 350,000 in total so that they can effectively launch a legal defense.